23 to 8 RSN Breakfast. Michael Christian, Mick McGuane, joined for the first time in 2013 by the Sydney St Kilda Western Bulldogs superstar Barry Hall. Baz, great to have you back on board, mate. Welcome and great to see you.
Oh, boys, thank you. I've been sweating all summer. I thought after last year's performance I wouldn't come back, but thanks for having me.
Terrific. Great to see you back. I can't believe the opener. I thought it might have been what we did at 5:30 this morning, open with the pit bull.
It's been an unbelievable summer. We're going to talk about some of those issues and touch on them and get your point of view, but we also want to focus in on the game tonight and comment on the game tomorrow. But first, before we do anything else, we need your top 8 for 2013. We've had all our calls. Now, you can't win the tab voucher to the value of $100, but you can give us your top 8 so we can pull and pick it apart and then reassess it at the end of the year.
Well, it's tough, isn't it? It's tough to fit 12 positions into 8, but from the top, Collingwood, West Coast, Sydney, Hawthorn, which is no surprise to anyone. That's probably what everyone would pick, but from there it gets tough. Carlton for me at 5th, Fremantle at 6th, Adelaide at 7th, and Richmond are going to squeeze in at 8th.
Oh, the Tigers.
I'm on the Tigers.
So no North?
No North. I put little comments beside each team. I think North's going to be unlucky. I just think everyone's going to improve quite a bit. I think Richmond's going to improve. That's why I've got them in the 8th. Just by how many close games they lost last year, I reckon they'll win those games this year, and they've learned a lot out of that. And they've got the star power that, Delidio, Martin, guys like this, Rewald can win games off his own dude. I reckon they're a fair chance this year to make the 8.
And no Cats. No
Geelong.
That's surprised everyone that I've told. But look, they got ageing stars, and I reckon.
Do you want to do it again?
No, I'm sticking by it. We'll talk about this at the end of the year, and you'll go, geez, you knew something we didn't. I just think their ageing stars are going to be too reliant on them. I know they've got some good young kids coming through, but I think they're going to slide a little bit, and not off their own bat. I just think everyone's going to improve. So still a great outfit, but I think they're going to finish in 9th.
As you say, someone's got to miss. What about the Bombers? What's your take on them?
Well, it's just the distractions, and you can read probably too much into that sometimes because players prepare and train, and
they block it out to a point, don't they?
They do, but stress and stuff takes energy levels out of you, and it gets you a bit flat. So
if you let it,
if you're flat going into a game, it's not nice. But I think just too many distractions at this time of year. I watched the Bombers the last few weeks, and their reliance on Paddy Ryder to have a good year. He's probably the most important player for mine in the Essendon outfit. He's certainly someone who's got to have a pretty consistent year and a good year for them to finish in the 8. And I haven't seen that from him yet.
It's going to be interesting, Essendon. And if we take everything that's happened over the summer, just take that out of the equation for the moment. But I'm really looking and excited about Joe Danaher coming into this team. From all reports, the initial view was, well, he might play a handful of games this year, but he's been going so well that we might see him play a lot more than that. Now, in combination with Ryder, in combination with Hurley, if they keep all their players on the park, which they didn't do last year, they could play some pretty exciting football. Of course, they've got this Sasada thing overhanging everything they do, but there's some exciting young talent there. Then you throw Goddard into the mix as well.
Well, you put things in perspective at times. Their first 11 rounds were unbelievable last year. They set the benchmark.
Yep.
They were 9-2, Chrisso, and it all went pear-shaped from there, whether it be the overload of injuries that they had.
Well, I think that's a key point, because you can only, and the same with West Coast, you can only carry the injuries for so long, and then it just wears you down. You just can't get over it, and that's part of what happened to Essendon, I'm sure.
But the way they play their footy, it's very much a confidence game. They're a short kicking. They go through the corridor. They need high efficiency to play well. As soon as that drops a little bit, confidence drops away. It's a really confidence game they play, and we've seen how hard it was for them to come back once their confidence did drop because of the way they played. They like to kick it short, as I said, and hit targets. That was up and going the first half of the year, but the second half, as I said, the confidence dropped. It was hard for them to get back.
You understand forward play better than most, Baz. Cranberry forward with Hurley, do you think he's got to play more forward, and can they survive by kicking a winning score with Ryder, Balchambers, or a bit of Hill kicking forward?
Yeah, Cranberry's a great player for mine. I reckon he's a very underrated forward. Hurley they've got to keep deep. I reckon they've got to play him that 25, 30 metres out so he can use his body as well, that full 360 degrees of the ground. As I said, I spoke about Ryder before how important he is. Bell Chambers is just as important going forward. And in the NAB Cup, both of those players had impacts going forward, which is a great thing, a great sign from Essendon's point of view. To have him going in the ruck, had an impact in the centre circle, but then go forward, take a couple of catches. It's a good sign for Essendon, but I still think it's not going to help them. I still think they're going to finish outside the 8.
So that leads to tonight's discussion. Obviously, on the road, historically not a good record in the state. Adelaide first up at home. Let's talk about them for a moment. Their loss of Tippett. How big of a negative is that? We know he was a contested marking beast last year, even though he didn't have a terrific year. I think he got 50 for the year, draws the long ball. Now that he's not marks, contested marks.
Yep.
So now that he's not there, one, can Taylor Walker do it alone? Is Jenkins up to it to actually fill the void?
Yeah, well, I guess that's one thing that with Tippett gone, everyone goes up a peg now. So Taylor Walker's going to take the number one defender. Jenkins, who I don't think he's ready at this stage. He's going to take number 2 tall, which is a tough task for a young kid. He needs time to develop. He's going to be a good player, but I don't think right now he is. So the Tippett factor we're going to see come into play, I think. Taylor Walker's a fantastic player, and he can certainly take the number 1 defender. I've got no qualms about that, but it's the backup, the number 2 tall and the number 3 tall who's the biggest issue for Adelaide. But they're well coached. They're very well coached. I reckon they're going to try and find some goals elsewhere.
So do you think Sando will use Sam Jacobs as a resting forward at various stages this year?
Well, he should. As I said, I reckon they've got to manufacture goals from somewhere else.
Paul Pleasure, for example.
Paul Pleasure's a great player. He's been a little bit out of touch with injuries and stuff like that, but he's a great player. You can get 30 or 40 out of him. It's a good result for Adelaide.
What do you think will happen tonight, Chrisso, in relation to who'll set what player for what? We talk about the sources of goal scoring ability coming from stoppages. We know Adelaide's got Scott Thompson and also Paddy Dangerfield. Would you give a role to Hocking to one of them, and which one would it be?
I think Dangerfield's the match winner for them, and if you can curb his influence, I think that. I mean, Thompson is one of those players that I reckon is in that bracket. He's really hard to tag. He's an inside player. He's really hard to stop finding the footy at those stoppages.
So you back Joe Watson to go head to head with him, for example?
Yeah, absolutely, and try and curb the running ability and the burst ability and the running through the lines ability of Dangerfield, and he's the X factor in that team, I reckon. Patrick Dangerfield, he's an absolute star, and if you can curb his influence, I think you'll go a long way to winning the game.
Well, Hocking's got the body for it. He's a very strong, solid fella, so he can body Dangerfield up and not let him go aside, which he's so good at. Dangerfield bursting through the packs. I agree with you. Thompson's hard to tag because he's a stoppage player and he's a grinder. He's a one pacer. Dangerfield's the one you've got to stop. He kicks the ball long. He's very penetrating and he runs out of stoppages, which is they're the ones you've got to stop in footy.
What about the Goddard situation? He plays his best when allowed to dictate his own starting point. Adelaide puts some work into him, knowing when he's at his best, gets 30, uses nearly every one of them. Does Van Berlo go to him, for example?
Just before you answer that, to both of you, where do you both think that Goddard will predominantly play this season? Barry, what sort of role do you think he'll have at Essendon?
Well, I think he's best off half back. I think the way he uses his ball, and he's a long penetrating kick, good efficiency by foot. I reckon off half back that's his best position. But in saying that, he can play on the wing as well. But I think for Essendon, he's best at half back.
I reckon it all comes down to coaching philosophy. What's most important? Knowing the opposition teams generally press, a lot of people put the value on the first kick out of defence. Mm-hmm. Hence the reason as to why they get it to Goddard, to bypass that bubble of players from the opposition, how they set up. But some would argue, to get value out of Brendan Goddard, you probably want him to be a goal scorer. Last year we've seen 10 and 12 goals from him in the last 2 years. The year that he had a breakout year, he kicked 24. He was going forward more often. He kicked 3s and 4s in games. And I reckon for value for money, the marquee player that he's recruited for, centre forward for me.
So is that where James Hird will play him tonight?
I'd love to see him put pressure on the opposition's defence and push Goddard forward more often. I reckon he's got to mirror what Voss did at Brisbane. He's got to mirror what Hird did when he was at Essendon. Midfield forward, hit the scoreboard, as opposed to Nathan Buckley, midfield back predominantly. Yes, we know they're very creative. We know they can set up, But I love midfielders that can hit the scoreboard. Those that can kick goals and multiple goals as a midfielder, they're worth their weight in gold.
I reckon there's no doubt that Adelaide will put time into him, because I think we've seen at St Kilda when teams did put time into him and actually succeeded, nullified him as a player. He got a bit cranky with it. He got a bit upset. He got a bit frustrated. So I reckon clubs look at that and think, let's put someone on him at least early and see what influence. Try and nullify his influence, and it might upset him a little bit.
All right, we'll pause there, take a break, and come back with more with Barry Hall in just a moment. It's 13 to 8.